Again, I'd like to thank all the people in the Tournament of Roses for what has been a wonderful week for everyone in our organization. The weather's been great. The hospitality has been fantastic. The facilities that we've had to work, whether it's the hotel, the practice area, whatever, has been, very well taken care of, and everybody has an attitude to try to please you. And I think this is probably what makes the Rose Bowl very, very special. I know somebody's going to ask me, what do you do different to get ready for this game? So before you ask me, I'm going to ask you, what do you do different to cover the game?
We'll open it up for questions.
No, I'm not finished. I just before I got that, I just wanted to kind of put it in perspective for you so that you could kind of understand that, at this point, you want to focus on execution. You want to make things simple for the players. It's a little bit like being in the batter's box before you got to go up to the plate, 2 out in the bottom of the ninth, and you got to get a hit to win the game. What do? You go through the routine you always go through, which is what we're trying to accomplish with our players in terms of how we practiced yesterday, how we'll walk through today, the things that we'll do leading up to the game, make them as same and simple as we can, because the focus right now is on getting the best execution in the game. And I think those are the things that the players need to be able to focus on. So from an injury standpoint, I know there were some concerns yesterday because we had a couple players who were sick. Those players are better today. Everybody will go through walkthrough. If they continue to improve, they should be able to participate in the game.
Questions for Coach on the far right aisle.
Tommy Dees, Tuscaloosa News. Coach, you talk a lot about pride, discipline, commitment, toughness, and effort. How did you settle on those concepts, and when and why did you settle on those as the backbone of your program?
Well, I think that intangibles are probably really important to being a good competitor. And I think that most people who have passion for something that is important to them is what gets them to commit to something. And, your mind kind of does whatever you tell it to do. So once you have the passion and the commitment, at least you're going to be moving in the right direction when it comes to work ethic, discipline, trying to make good choices and decisions about what you do and what you don't do. And the effort, the toughness, and the discipline to execute are probably the key ingredients in any sport to, and when I say toughness, I'm talking about mental probably as much as physical, so that you can sustain and overcome adversity and persevere tough circumstances. So I think those are sort of part of your character and who you are, and I think the same ingredients would be necessary to be successful in anything.
On the far left aisle.
Coach, Eddie Pels from AP. You're sort of looking in my direction here. And to answer your question, I just take them one day at a time. What would you say is the...
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. What have been your observations about coaching in Alabama, where the sport means so much and the school has such a great tradition?
Well, I think, first of all, we have a tremendous amount of respect for the tradition and the passion that our fans have, and I think we have a tremendous amount of respect for that. But, beyond that, we sort of go about the process of things that we feel that we need to do to help our program be successful, which, is to still focus on player development personally, academically, and athletically. And everybody in our organization is there to help our players be more successful in one of those areas so that they actually have an opportunity to be more successful in life. So the rest of it really doesn't affect that. And that's what we try to do from a program standpoint. I mean, that's what affects recruiting, player development, bringing people together as a team. So the rest of it really doesn't internally affect how you try to build your team.
On the left in the middle.
Coach Saban, Andy Staples from SportsIllustrated.com. How do you feel about the idea of a coach in waiting? Is it something you'd ever consider for your program?
I don't really have an opinion about that. I think that's something that administrators need to decide if that's the best thing that they want to have to try to create continuity in a program, and I think that's probably the purpose. And I think that if you have the right chemistry in terms of who the people are that are associated with a situation like that, it could work very well. But I think if the chemistry was not correct, it may not work very well. So I think it would all be time and circumstance relative to the chemistry involved.
Middle aisle on the right.
Coach Mike Rada, ABC Birmingham. I know you're a detailed guy. You have a contingency for everything. Should something happen to Greg during the game, what's your plan? Who do you turn to?
Well, we've had A.J. McCarron has really sort of been our backup quarterback since the bye week. It's been our plan that if we had to play him, that we'll play the guy that gives us the best opportunity to win the game, and that's what we would do. Star Jackson is also an option for us, but we would make the decision on. We've gotten this far, so I think in fairness to everyone, we would put the guy in the game that would give us the best opportunity to win. And if the person who has sort of been the backup quarterback needs to do that because he's performed the best, practiced the best, and put himself in that position, I'm pretty certain that that's the direction that we would go in.
Front row on the right.
Chase Goodbread, Tuscaloosa News. Coach, William Vlahos mentioned the other day, we asked him why he thinks Rolando McClain's a special player. He said because he can play through blocks or around blocks. Most linebackers, he said, can only do one or the other. How common is it to have a linebacker that can play the blocks both ways?
Well, I think that, William Vlahos is probably a pretty good evaluator of linebackers because really you have two sort of types of guys that play that position. Guys that are fast flow, slip blocks, I call it, type of guys to get to where they need to be. Then you have guys that are big enough and powerful enough to actually use their hands, take on people, hold the point, shed the blocker, and be able to make the play. And it probably is pretty unique to have guys who can do both. And that's what we look for in our inside backers, and we were very fortunate to have two at the beginning of the year because Dante Hightower can do the same thing. But I think that's what makes Rowe an outstanding player is he has the athleticism, the speed, the mobility, and the power to do both.
Far right on the aisle.
Brett Tannehill, Alabama Public Radio. Could you give us your perspective on concussion safety and how the approach to that has evolved or maybe hasn't changed from your days when you first became a head coach to now?
Well, I think the technology medically is a lot better today in terms of the tests they give, and I can't really sort of give you the technical perspective on it from a medical standpoint, but I know that we give our players tests, and we know that, when those tests get to a certain point, then, they're able to have activity, and when they get to a certain other point, they're allowed to go back and have contact. And we continue to test them to make sure they're not having reoccurring symptoms. So I feel like the technology is a lot better now than it used to be relative to these tests, and these are all things to me that are medical decisions. As a coach, we never get involved in whether a player should practice, shouldn't practice, or whatever. I mean, whatever the medical staff determines that a guy should do is what we support and want to do. When concussions occur, I think to have a good baseline of a history of a guy as well as these pretty accurate tests are a real asset to making determinations about concussions.
Third row on the left.
Nick, Tim Griffin from ESPN.com. I wonder if you could describe the challenges that Texas kick return game provide, particularly with some of the struggles that you guys have had in covering kicks this year.
Right. Well, I think that in both phases, in the return game, punt and kickoff, they're probably as good as anybody that we played against. As a punt returner, Shipley is really good decision maker, good quickness, can make the first guy miss. They do a good job in terms of loading the box and forcing the punt and then holding up from the same looks, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for the interior guys to cover. So that's going to be a challenge for us to protect, punch through, and get in cover lanes. And our gunners have to do a good job of forcing the kicks, and our punter has to do a good job of hang time and placing the kicks. Kickoff return, they have tremendous speed, in both their return guys. And I think if you don't keep the ball in front and stay in your lanes and dodge blocks the correct way and read the return and play off the indicator reads that you have running down the field and get guys in the right place, if you give these guys a seam, they're going to get out and get off, to the races, and it's going to be pretty hard to sort of manage that. But I think it goes back to the same thing. It's going to be execution of our coverage teams, which, in the last few games has been pretty good. It was pretty good in the Florida game, but we've had issues with that at times during the season, mostly in how we've executed.
Third row on the right.
Rachel Barbeau, Tuscaloosa News. Coach, I talked to Colin Peake the other day, and he said possibly that the team left up to 21 points on the board against Florida. I was wondering if that was your most complete game thus far this season, and if it was, how do you improve against Texas?
Well, I think that I don't know about leaving the points on the board. I don't know who made that assessment, but I thought we did a good job offensively in the game, controlling the ball, moving the ball, and scoring enough points to have success in the game. But I think you always want to build on what you did. That's probably the most complete game that we played all year against a very good team. And, when you beat a good team like that, it's one of two things. Is that the end or is that the beginning? And hopefully you learn what it takes to play that and that way, and you can build on that in the next opportunity that you have. But that's the challenge that we have with our players, in whether they will do that and look at that as a starting point and how they can build on it, rather than the end point and being satisfied with that. And that's a mindset, and that's what we've been trying to promote for this game.
Front row on the right.
Coach Gentry Estes, Mobile Press Register. Coach, was Rowe able to do very much at practice yesterday? And given his level of toughness, do you really feel like there's much of anything that could keep him from playing in this game?
Well, I don't know. We're not going to let him play unless the doctors say he can play. And if he's sick and he's dehydrated, and he's not going to play in the game. Not going to put a player at risk regardless of what the circumstance relative to the game is. So I think he's better today. He did not do much in practice yesterday, and I think he's better today, and he's practiced all year, and I don't think he's missed a practice in the 3 years that he's been here. But I think he's capable of recovering and being able to play in a game if he's medically cleared to play in a game.
On the left aisle.
Good morning, Nick. Ralph Russo, AP. If Alabama wins, it'll be 4 straight for the SEC. The league has always been good. You've been in it twice now. It seems to be peaking right now. 2 questions. Is it better now than it was the first time you entered it? I know it wasn't that long ago. And also, why has it gotten so strong?
Well, I think the league, I've always been asked to make comparisons with the SEC and other places that I've been. I think the league is the way it is because of the top to bottom sort of strength in the league. Where most leagues have 2 or 3 or 4 good teams. Our league seems to have 7, 8, or 9 or 10 sometimes. So therefore, each game that you play, if you're not bringing your A game, you have a good shot of not being able to have success. And I think that's what makes the league better. difficult to make comparisons between now and then. I think the league was a lot like that then, and it's stayed that way and continued to improve. I think one of the things that sort of sets the SEC out a little bit is, the great TV package and the great exposure that we get with having as many as 3 games on national TV every week, which other conferences don't enjoy that. They're on more regional telecasts, so there's more of a national sort of exposure that really can enhance, your recruiting base. And a lot of players in the SEC, I think, that are being recruited look at it as a conference where there's a lot of good players and a lot of good competition and a lot of good programs and a lot of good coaches, which I would certainly agree with, and a lot of good schools. So the ability to recruit quality players and having quality programs is why the SEC is what it is.
Back aisle on the right.
Coach Bob Neal with Comcast Sports. Good morning.
Morning.
The media has labeled your practice facility Camp Saban with the fence around it and such, and the security, and that's understandable, preparing for a game. My question is, what goes on back there? Not really. My question is, how do you change, or what can you change this late in the game in preparation for Texas?
Well, I don't think we change anything. I think you have to do what you do, and you have to make what you do work against the things that they do. I think technically that's what you try to do in each and every game. And obviously, if you see things that may work or you think may have an opportunity to enhance and complement what you do, you add things. But I don't think it's uncommon for any coach to not want people to see practice when you're playing in any game. And the thing about it is I have no problem with the media coming to practice, but when you televise everything and put it on camera, then we might as well just open it to everybody. So that's more the issue, that somebody can watch it on TV and say, oh, they're running this play now, or they're playing this defense, or whatever. And I don't think any coach really would want that to happen. Would you, if you were a coach? I don't know. I don't think.
Everybody.
No. We've got time for 2 more questions. On the right.
Kevin Skarbinski, the Birmingham News. Nick, you sound a little hoarse this morning. What do you have to do to make sure you're able to discuss things tomorrow night with your players and the officials?
Oh, I can. Is anybody having trouble understanding me, hoarse or not? Just, trying to project a positive image, I mean. But
final question, back row on the left.
It's something called allergies,
Coach Saban, ABC El Paso, Texas. Talk about your counterpart, Mac Brown. I'm over here. Talk about your counterpart, Mac Brown.
Well, I think, Mac is, we have a tremendous amount of respect for all that Mac's done in his career as a coach. Each place that he's been has had a tremendous amount of success with a lot of consistency, and I think that he's very well organized, runs a very good program, is an outstanding recruiter, and surrounds himself with very good people. And I think the consistency and performance that he's been able to accomplish at Texas and other places sort of, proves that that he has done a marvelous job of affecting people and getting them to give their best efforts to be successful.